Something happened recently that made me stop and think about the way that I think about Scottish history. And then planning this video, I had to reassess my views again. Are you prepared to reconsider yours? If you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right of the screen. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. Not long ago, I met up with historian Neil McGuigan from St Andrews University. Now, he recently wrote a book on Malcolm Canmore. That is the most intriguing period of Scottish history. And if Malcolm's not the most pivotal in history, surely his family is. He killed Macbeth, married Saxon Margaret, the Queen canonised as a saint. His son David brought the Normans. Malcolm's life and death were central to Scottish history. And when you think that his Celtic/Saxon daughter married the Norman Henry I, son of William the Conqueror, to help secure his English throne, do I need to say more? Now, I make extra videos for my Patreon members, and an interview with Neil about this book and the first in-depth study of this key character was perfect. You can see this and other videos by clicking the link top right and becoming a Patreon member. Go and do it. But to give you a sneak preview, the period after Malcolm died intrigues me. And I've covered it in a couple of videos. Who was the last Celtic king of Scotland and the forgotten kings of Scotland? You see, this unifying of Celtic, Saxon and Norman through Malcolm's daughter in England and the Normanising of Scotland through his son David didn't happen automatically. When Malcolm died, his children fled to England and Malcolm's brother, Donald III, became king. Now, this was perfectly normal royal succession in the Celtic system of tanistry under which his predecessor Macbeth had been chosen. It was kind of as if the community of Scotland took a step back and said, oh, hold on, Malcolm, this eldest son inheriting and bringing the Saxon and all that, it's just all going a bit quick. And then Malcolm's sons came back one by one, some cooperating with Uncle Donald and others with Norman knights to overthrow him. One son, Duncan, was grudgingly accepted by the Scots on condition that he sent his Norman knights back to England. And when he did, it all felt like a tussle between traditional Celtic and the Norman period that was approaching. And that's the point of this video. Neil pulled me up on this. He pointed out the trap that I'd fallen into. The trap that he said so many of us fall into. A trap set in Victorian London as Jack the Ripper raged. I may have over-egged that just a little bit. He pointed to our hangover from the historians of the days of empire, painting Scottish history with a narrative that I just had. The tension of Celtic to Norman Scotland was moving from petty kingdom to medieval state, from chaos to order, from barbarian to civilised, Gaelic to English. The project still being worked on in the wake of Culloden in those days, clearance and improvement. But Neil pointed to the normality of the dynastic events and the family squabbles that I'd described within the context of Celtic tradition, the Canmore family and Scotland's status in the wider world. In my questions to Neil, I had unconsciously framed that transition in the terms that we've been programmed to think on these islands. Me! The rabid, raging, ranting nationalist decried by unionists in past and future comment sections. Surely I couldn't fall for this anglicising, unionising narrative. You might think that I'm being controversial. You may think even more so in the next section. Let's see. Are you an immigrant? Let me know in the comment section. I knew that I'd be visiting Western Australia. I've been touring my stand-up show Stories of Scotland. Actually, when this video uploads, I'll have just finished my show in Christchurch. but there'll still be shows in Dunedin, Brisbane, Cairns and Melbourne. So check the link in the description below to get tickets for these shows and my shows back home in Scotland during autumn of 2023. Anyway, I thought this was a perfect place to make a video about cultural assimilation, a civilising force taking over and the natural order of things. Australia, formed when the nations and regions of Britain, freed from parochial rivalries of home, mixed as one. At times more British than the British. This was the perfect microscope slide on which to examine my specimen, the ideal projector to display on the wall the rightful, inevitable and predestined acquisition of Terra Nullius by the fully formed and perfected British Empire. Where better than Perth? As a guy from the real Perth, coming to this Perth, how much more Scottish can you get? It's got street names that are the same as our ones. I met up with schoolmates that had been in my class in Perth High School and had now made their lives here. I met school kids that had taught at that very same school and old workmates. I even went to a Proclaimers gig and I didn't have to walk 500 miles to get there. 1.7 kilometres to be exact. That's right, kilometres. Not everything's the same as home. I brought my son. His Australian citizenship is by dint of his grandparents emigrating as £10 palms in the 60s and returning after his mum's birth in South Australia. He's thinking about joining a new wave of Scots coming here. Will my own son be another nail in the coffin of Aboriginal lifestyles? Indigenous peoples who, like Gaels before them, were expected to give up language, culture and values and conform to the inevitable civilising Anglo-Saxon force. It was this context of Indigenous peoples devalued and sidelined that I thought would provide an appropriate setting, even if briefly, to examine and magnify the question that Neil had raised. For Indigenous Australians, is the rapid change to skyscrapers of the central business district and the sprawling suburbs of Perth an accelerated version of the longer cultural constriction and dispossession of the Gael? Hay Street, Murray Street, Aberdeen Street, Perth itself. These names may have meant something to the Gael or a visiting Scot, but to the people who belonged. Now, very quickly, I realised that these were much bigger questions than I could possibly deal with in a short, oversimplified video. As it was, I was saved from the rights and wrongs and complexities of conflict between Aboriginal and European culture by the discovery of an Australian historical paper by Timothy S. Forrest called The Whiteness of the Frontiers of Empire, Hebridean Scots and Group Settlement in Western Australia, 1923 to 1928. You can imagine my excitement. It told the story of 85 crofters and fishers from the Outer Hebrides who'd arrived on the SS Bendigo in October 1923 to start new lives on the Peel Estate, 35 miles to the south of here. This was part of the 1922 Empire Settlement Act. British, Canadian and Australian authorities shared the cost of resettling people in various schemes across the empire. Western Australia was sparsely populated, remote and geographically vulnerable to Asian migration in general and imperial expansion of an industrialising Japan in particular. To London officials and Western Australian high Hegians, Hebridean Islanders were the perfect settlers. Since the suppression of the 1745 uprising, Highland Gaels had been the shock troops of the British Empire. Many of those being resettled were recently returned from military service in the Great War. And as crofters, surely they were the perfect folk to remake and retame the land in a way that city migrants could never have done. These were the perfect people to cultivate and defend British territory against migrants and invaders from overseas. Of course, through a local prism, these were migrants and invaders from overseas. Now, I should say two local prisms, because I don't just mean Aboriginal locals. I mean the Anglo-Saxon British locals who had made this place their home. The more British than the British Australians didn't quite see these Hebridean incomers as British. Anglo-Saxon British, like English or Lowland Scots. Not the strong, fetlock, salt of the earth improvers that would enhance the community, no. But feckless, practically Irish Gaels that the sons of Malcolm Canmore had overcome all those years before and who were supposed to have disappeared with Bonnie Prince Charlie. For some incomprehensible reason, they spoke that barbaric tongue when it was obvious that God meant folks to speak English. They were no better than the Japanese. God, they were little better than the blacks. There was conflict with the children at school. There was strife with the parents in the community. The land allocated to this group of islanders was called Group 80. Within 2 years, the project was the subject of a royal commission. The government had offered a school to train the immigrants in clearing land, establishing settlements and dairy farming. The school never materialised. A surveyor stated the land set aside for the settlers was so abysmal, with no access to water suitable for irrigation and personal consumption. Every winter, Group 80 flooded because of substandard soil, lack of runoff, high water table and the state's failure to build the drainage system it promised. The Hebrideans were supposed to just make do. The state government had promised each family 4-room wooden cottages, but on arrival, no shelter had been built. There were corrugated iron sheets, which they were supposed to use to build something makeshift for themselves. In less than 5 years, Group 80 was abandoned by the state, but most of the islanders had abandoned it long before, moving up here to Perth, some of them taking the long road back to Scotland. Only 2,500 farms of the proposed 6,000 were actually developed, and the scheme's losses cost the state over £6.5 million. Now, all the groupies, as they were called, were expected to show Victorian notions of self-help, but somehow more was expected of the Hebrideans. Of course, the local Anglo-Saxon Australians felt all that was needed was more backbone. Just work harder and make unworkable land workable. The Indigenous Australians wondered why the land had to be transformed in the first place. Shouldn't we work with the land that was there? To Anglo-Saxon Australians, failure was due to the natural laziness inherent in the Celtic or Indigenous character. It's a dilemma, isn't it? Being a self-reliant warrior race and a vanquished people. 3 very different lenses that I'm guessing folks still look down today. But there are more prisms still through which we view the world. One of my Perth to Perth immigrant friends told me of the joke when accosted by a local Aboriginal black dude in the street, calling him a white. Anyway, telling him he should fuck off back to where he came from. I pointed out that in our Perth, the exact reverse had been a regular experience in my youth. Now, I'm not giving my mate a hard time. He's an astute, sensitive, empathetic guy with skills of self-examination. But our life experience does give us slightly different prisms. He told me another story of an English mate who'd moved out here 38 years ago. Now, this is a yeoman of Anglo-Saxon stock, and he lives near a stadium where concerts are regularly held, and he's constantly bothered by tanked up gig goers peeing in his garden on their way home. And when remonstrating with a young Aussie lad in his 20s, the young lad, who wasn't even born when this long-settled Englishman arrived, told him to sod off back to his own country. Imagine the irony if that young lad was descended from one of those Hebridean settlers. Different lenses, different truths. The young Aussie, the long-time English settler, the Aboriginal, all living in and around Perth, and yet none of them understand my mate when he pronounces Perth the way it's meant to sound. Many folks here don't even know that there is a real Perth, where William Wallace sneaked through the gates, where Robert the Bruce attacked across the moat. Times far distant, they need a telescope to see even dimly. Maybe it's not a telescope. Our American or Canadian cousins, who along with their First Nation hosts have their own stories, they seem to view Scottish history through a kaleidoscope with colours and tartans and clans that bears little resemblance to our reality. Only we at home see history with clarity. No kaleidoscope of colours for us, no distortion. Just unionist red, white and blue, lion rampant nationalist red and yellow, or a saltire cross. There are so many ways to look at our history. It's not a lens or a prism that we view through. It's a precious diamond, many-faceted, multi-layered in its beauty, and anyone that sees only one truth has never really looked. You'll have watched this through your own diffracting stone that tints it ruby red or sapphire blue, maybe amber. I'll leave a link to Neil McGuigan's book in the description below, and there's a link to another video posing questions on Scotland's history coming up on screen now. Support the channel by becoming a Patreon member or buy me a coffee in the description below. Ha mi an dóchas gwn be lá Mali. Chéirí an drasta.